President Trump is on defense over several different fronts tonight, bowing to this military pressure from Turkey, new subpoenas over Ukraine, and again shifting his defense in an impeachment probe that could define his presidency. So it is worth keeping track of the evidence here. One piece of evidence suggests Trump knew his Ukraine plot was wrong because he vigorously denied it, originally insisting that rather than calling for an investigation of Biden, the call was congratulatory and about some sort of general corruption.
Conversation I had was largely congratulatory, was largely corruption. But my complaint has always been, and I'd withhold again, and I'll continue to withhold until such time as Europe and other nations contribute to Ukraine.
That claim was undercut by evidence from Trump's own White House, and Trump tried to shift that by famously calling for more foreign collusion.
China should start an investigation into the Bidens, because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine.
Democrats said that was an effort to launder and try to normalize this kind of plotting. And by the time Trump was privately conferring with House Republicans heading into this weekend, just on Friday, he was back to admitting the plot was a bad thing, but blaming it on his employee, Rick Perry, saying Perry made him do it. Now, that is an irrelevant argument. If this plot is a high crime, which is a judgment left to the Senate, it's not a defense to say your subordinate told you to do it. And don't you wonder, is this even okay with Rick Perry? Well, it turns out you can blame it on the energy secretary because he don't mind and he don't care. And that's why this is starting to look like a Milli Vanilli defense, because you got to blame it on something.
Absolutely. I asked the president multiple times, Mr. President, we think it is in the United States and in Ukraine's best interest that you and the president of Ukraine have conversations, that you discuss the options that are there.
What does this argument reveal about where the impeachment debate is headed? David Corn, how you doing?
Okay, how are you?
I want to ask you that. I want to ask you about the Milli Vanilli defense and where impeachment's headed, so stick around when we're back in 30 seconds.
Okay.
Turn to Mother Jones, David Corn. David, you knew it was a 30-second break.
I know. I'm sorry. I was getting prepared.
Addict. You're a news addict. I'm sure you're checking the headlines. What does it tell you that you have these defenses coming?
Well, you know, I don't want to help any movie studio in particular, but it does seem to me that Donald Trump is playing the Joker card, that he wants to be the Joker, and he realizes that chaos is his best friend. He likes chaos. So we go from I didn't do it to I did do it to I'm doing it right now in front of you as we speak to Rick Perry made me do it. And it's about Ukraine. It's about liquefied nitrogen gas. It's about the Bidens. It's about servers. You know, he just wants this ball of confusion, the Temptation song, to be out there. So it's really hard for people to get a hold of what's going on. And one concern
your theory basically is what he gives up in logic, because saying I did something, it's okay, I'm proud of it, is very different than saying it's so bad I have to blame someone. But what he gives up in logic, he gets back in what?
He gets back in clutter, in chaos. It's not there's no complete narrative through line here. People who are, you and I follow this stuff day in, day out, nanosecond by nanosecond. To a lot of people viewing, and particularly to his base, who are watching from afar, or not watching, or watching Fox, which is barely mentioning this, they just see him putting out all sorts of different stories, and it all gets kind of muddy. And so they fall back onto what is their natural bias, which is I like the president. They must be going after him for bad reasons, and I can't follow the details. And I think to people in the middle who want to try to understand this, he does everything imaginable to make it incomprehensible.
I mean, part of what you're talking about, and look, David, I would never, in the middle of a serious newscast, reach for an obscure pop cultural reference.
Never.
But what you're describing sounds like the South Park Chewbacca defense.
The South Park Chewbacca defense.
Yeah, in South Park, they depict a defense lawyer, Johnny Cochran, using illogic around the character of Chewbacca in Star Wars to simply confuse the jury so that by the end of the
Yeah.
closing presentation, it's not that the defendant looks more innocent, in this case Donald Trump,
Right.
but rather that enough people just get confused.
And they get turned off. They don't pay attention. And we saw this with the Trump-Russia scandal in the sense that it was in some ways confusing, had a lot of different elements to it. You know, somebody had to write a book to explain it. And it took a book maybe to explain it.
Look, man, I'm not going to blow you up, but if you think that the takeaway was confusing, you spent a few years trying to explain it in print and on air.
Well, I think
that's on you, man.
No, I think it's on the fact that within the media as we have it these days, it's very easy to come along and spin out lies, alternative realities, fake facts. Look what Devin Nunes did to the investigation on the House Intelligence Committee, trying to bring up all sorts of diversionary subjects, and that, and the media feels compelled to cover that to some extent, even if they say it's not true. It still creates an impression that that is indeed confusing to people who don't pay close attention.
Well, and that may be why a process like impeachment and a Senate trial, which becomes the biggest story in the nation for a while, may actually be the scariest thing to them. If the president really wanted to be impeached like he used to claim, he would just say, bring it on. Instead, they're stonewalling, they're counterattacking, they're trying 4 different things thrown at the wall.
Right.
It may be that in that focus, some of the confusion argument works less. We'll see. I got to fit in a break. Mr. Korn, thank you as always.
Good to be with you.
Appreciate you, sir. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.